Harper Audio presents Universal Man, The 7 Lives of John Maynard Keynes, by Richard Davenport-Hines, read by Seån Barrett. Good work is not done by humble men. It is one of the first duties of a professor, for example, in any subject, to exaggerate a little both the importance of his subject and his own importance in it. A man who is always asking, "Is what I do worthwhile?" and "Am I the right person to do it?" will always be ineffective himself and a discouragement to others. He must shut his eyes a little and think a little more of his subject and himself than they deserve. G.H. Hardy. It is, I think, of the essential nature of economic exposition that it gives not a complete statement, which, even if it were possible, would be prolix and complicated to the point of obscurity, but a sample statement, so to speak, out of all the things which could be said, intended to suggest to the reader the whole bundle of associated ideas, so that, if he catches the bundle, he will not in the least be confused by the technical incompleteness of the mere words which the author has written down. This means, on the one hand, that an economic writer requires from his reader much goodwill and intelligence and a large measure of cooperation, and, on the other hand, that there are 1,000 futile yet verbally legitimate objections which an objector can raise. In economics, you cannot convict your opponent of error. You can only convince him of it. Maynard Keynes. What do we do? What is the remedy? It would be most inappropriate for me to stand up here and tell you what Keynes would have thought. Goodness knows he would have thought of something much cleverer than I can think of. Roy Harrod. Chapter 1. Altruist. 7 snapshots of a universal man. An intellectual in his 20s in college rooms in Cambridge, hunched forward listening, lolling back in reflection, then standing on a hearthrug speaking, eager, testing, provoking, always in passionate, lucid paragraphs, to the secretive discussion group called the Apostles, offering new intellectual or ethical systems, and later acting on his belief in the virtues of immorality, having energetic bouts of illegal, risky sex with men from all classes whom he picked up in museums, saunas, railway stations, and streets. A man of 31, perched in the sidecar of a motorbike driven by his brother-in-law, hurtling at top speed on the dusty, hot roads from Cambridge to London on the 3rd of August, 1914. The young man is a Cambridge economist and has been summoned to the Treasury to help with the crisis caused by the looming European war. This heretical outsider single-handedly dissuades the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Lloyd George, and the Treasury mandarins from taking a fatal step that the banks had convinced them was essential: the suspension of the Bank Charter Act. His advice is decisive in averting monetary panic and financial collapse in the first week of the war. Less than 4 years later, during a critical phase of the World War, the Treasury official responsible for the government's external finances, persuading the hard-bitten and visually insensitive Chancellor of the Exchequer, Bonar Law, whose home is notorious for its drabness, to allot £20,000 of government money to buy paintings for the National Gallery at the auction of the contents of Degas' studio. Attending the auction in Paris as the booms of advancing German artillery rattle the confidence of buyers. Buying for himself works by Cézanne, Ingres, Delacroix, and Degas. Carrying the Cézanne back to England in his suitcase and secreting it in the ditch of a Sussex farm track because it is too heavy for him to carry to the friend's house which he is visiting. A man in his 40s, a member of the Bloomsbury Group, art collector, bibliophile, magazine proprietor, ballet-main, and husband of a dancer in Diaghilev's Ballet Russe, named Lydia Lopokova, stumping round England on behalf of Liberal candidates during general elections, explaining taxation to Blackburn cotton operatives, slumps to Barrow shipyard workers, Russian loans to the shopkeepers of Cambridge, mobbed by railwaymen at Blackpool, becoming an international opinion former, as his articles in the Manchester Guardian are syndicated to newspapers in New York, Berlin, Paris, Milan, Vienna, Amsterdam, and Stockholm. As the slump hits Britain and the Great Depression looms over the
Sample complete. Ready to continue?